Okay, I was thinking about this the other day. I feel like blush has to be one of the most universally loved makeup products. If you look at really any type of makeup look, whether it is more subtle, more dramatic, any time period, like no matter what, I feel like blush is such an important part of people's makeup looks. And it feels like every year people are like, oh, blush is trending, it's having a moment, but does it ever really go away? I mean, you could probably say that about a lot of different makeup products, but I feel like so many people really love blush, myself included. There are time periods where I'm more into it than others, but in general, it really is such a staple part of my collection. And doing what I do, reviewing makeup, trying new products, I have tried hundreds of blushes. So I wanted to sit down and share my top favorite formulas of all time. I just did a video like this on eyeshadow palettes not too long ago. If you want to check it out, I think I'll make this a series on my channel where I narrow it down to the best formulas that I personally love and recommend. So let me know what you want to see next. And please let me know, like, what is your number one blush? If you could only wear one blush, or, what's the formula that you feel like is the easiest to use, the one that makes the biggest difference? Because even though I've tried hundreds, I know there are still so many out there that I haven't tried. So let me know in the comments. I would love to read through those. Okay, how do I want to organize this? I think I'm going to organize it based on category, like liquid, then cream, then powder, because the formulas are so different. Okay, kicking off the liquid category, let's start with an obvious one, the Rare Beauty Liquid Blush formula. This is such a gorgeous formula. And I have to say, out of all three categories, liquid, cream, and powder, I probably have the least amount of liquid blushes because for me, it's been a formula that's kind of been difficult to use in the past. I haven't always figured out the best way to apply it or incorporate it into my makeup routine, especially as someone who used to love powder and matte products. But I have to say, when I tried this, I was actually blown away because it is so easy to use. And as someone who had tried so many liquid blushes in the past that looked streaky or uneven or lifted my foundation, I really was shocked by how much I loved this formula. So this is available at Sephora. It retails for $23. They do have mini options now, which is really nice. And I do recommend the mini options if you're someone who likes to switch up your blush or you don't tend to reach for the same formula and the same color every single day. Because with this formula, a tiny bit is all you need. And even though these look really small, they're going to last you a really long time. So these come in 14 different shades. They do have radiant and matte finishes. And I actually think all of the ones I have are in the radiant finish, which I didn't realize. I just kind of chose them based on shade rather than the actual finish. But I'll swatch everything that I have for you just so you can have a look at some different colors in case you're thinking about trying it out. So this is a very highly pigmented formula. Like I said, a little bit goes an extremely long way. And I think if you are trying this out for the first time, you might apply a little bit too much and be like, this isn't for me. Just try going in with a very small amount. What I like to do is apply this to the back of my hand and then just take a brush and blend it on the skin. I'll actually link some of my favorite blush brushes in the description box below because that is a question I get a lot. When it comes to liquid blush, I love the Real Techniques Tapered Cheek Brush, and I also like the e.l.f. Complexion Duo brushes. Those are two really affordable options that do a great job of diffusing liquid blush really well. Rare Beauty has a bunch of different colors, whether you're into like a light pink or you like a bright coral or you like a deep berry. So I definitely think they have a really good varied selection of shades, and this formula does last on the skin all day long. It's incredibly light, very weightless, but the pigment stays put. So I do recommend trying this out if you're looking for a long-lasting, super blendable, very thin, easy to use blush. I think for some people it might not be considered easy to use because it is so pigmented, but I'm telling you, less is more. So as long as you'll start off softer and then gradually add more, I think you'll be perfectly fine. And this really is the formula that convinced me that I could wear liquid blush. So many brands have attempted to dupe the Rare Beauty liquid blushes, and I don't find that there are a lot of close dupes. There are some great affordable alternatives, but the one that I find comes the closest is this formula from e.l.f. This is their Camo Liquid Blush formula. Now these are a lot less expensive. They retail for $7 each, but they do come with a lot less product. So you get 0.13 ounces in the e.l.f. blushes and then 0.25 ounces in Rare Beauty. So Rare Beauty comes with about twice the amount of product, but even if you were to purchase two of these, you'd still be saving money because you'd spend $14, you get two different colors versus 23. I do love the Rare Beauty ones. I think it kind of comes down to which brand you prefer or which colors you prefer because e.l.f. only comes in 9 different shades. So they don't have quite as many options as Rare Beauty, but if you can find a shade in the e.l.f. blush that comes close to the Rare Beauty blush, I would recommend going with e.l.f. because I really do find the formula to be almost identical. If I'm being incredibly nitpicky, like trying to really look for differences, these aren't things you would really notice on the skin, but I would say the e.l.f. formula maybe shears out a little bit more. It's still a very, very highly pigmented formula. So again, a little bit goes such a long way, but truthfully, like when I'm applying these side by side, I really don't see any difference in the way they go on, the way they wear. They're very, very close, very smooth, incredibly lightweight. They blend out super easily. A little bit goes a long way and they stay in place well. This product is a really good example of the fact that you don't have to spend high-end prices to get high-end quality. And I think that's kind of e.l.f.'s thing across the board anyway, but I do find that this formula is great too. I would love to know, what is your favorite liquid blush formula? I thought about including Say, but I only have one Say blush, so I felt like that wasn't really like a fair product to include in this video because that's a newer product to me. I don't have a bunch of colors, but I do really like that formula too. So let me know what your #1 go-to liquid blush is. Okay, moving on to cream blushes. Let's start with one of my favorite affordable blushes. I feel like you can find these everywhere. I've seen them at Target, at Ulta, at Walmart, in drugstores, online. So these are really easily accessible, which is amazing. I feel like sometimes with drugstore brands, you can only find them in certain stores or you can only find them online, but that's not the case with these. These are the Milani Cheek Kiss cream blushes. Now they only come in 4 shades, which I think is probably the biggest con for me. All of these shades end up pulling pretty pink on the skin. There is a coral shade, but even that one has a lot of pink to it. So I would love to see them expand. Their baked blush line has a lot of different options. I think it would be nice to see like a deeper berry, some nude tones, some brown toned blushes. I just think the line has a lot of potential because the formula is so gorgeous. This is a little bit more of a unique texture. I feel like it's almost like a gel balm texture. Maybe a mix between like a gel, a balm, and a cream. These are really nice because you can tap them right on the cheeks with your fingers and they apply really, really well that way. Or you can go in with a brush. You can shear these out to get a little bit more of a natural look, but you can also build them up as well. And because they have like this really interesting balm-like texture, I feel like they just build easily without looking too heavy on the skin. It's not like you're layering a thick cream on the skin. They're very, very silky, so they kind of melt into the skin in the most perfect way. So I really like this formula for everyday wear because it looks really glowy, very gorgeous on the skin. It has a nice dewy finish, but it's not over the top. Like it's not so luminous that I feel like it looks like you're too glowy if that's not what you're looking for. I do feel like these are pretty long wearing on the skin, but the best way to ensure that they stay in place well is to really work them into the skin, whether you're using your fingers or a brush or a sponge. It isn't the type of formula that you want to like quickly brush on and go. I feel like really like blending it into the skin is the best way to make sure that you have color by the end of the day. And once you do that, it almost works not like a stain, but I feel like it has the staying power of a stain. Like it's not going anywhere because it just melts into the skin and stays put. So definitely a really great affordable option if you're looking for like a unique cream type blush. Now, most of the blushes that I already talked about are pretty rich, pretty vibrant. They have a lot of pigment to them. Even if you shear them out in general, you're going to get a good amount of color payoff. And these still have really good color payoff, but they're definitely more on the natural side. If you like a little bit of a softer look, I definitely recommend checking out the Merit cream blushes. These are very, very easy to work with. They actually describe them as a foolproof, flexible balm. They're supposed to have a transparent veil of color, so your skin actually shows through. And they are marketed as lighter coverage blushes, which definitely makes sense. I probably reach for these most if I'm wearing like a tinted moisturizer or a concealer, and I'm not necessarily reaching for a ton of makeup, but I want a little bit of color. These are absolutely perfect. And normally I don't swipe blush on like directly onto my skin. I'll usually use like a brush and apply it that way or apply it to the back of my hand because I'm always a little bit nervous to over apply blush, but these are very, very easy to work with. So you can swipe them directly onto the skin and just tap them in with your finger, blend them in with your finger or a brush, and you get the most beautiful, even, soft color. But just because they are, you know, how do they describe them? Translucent, or I think they say transparent, lighter coverage. Just because they're marketed that way doesn't mean they don't have good color payoff. Like, you can build these up to look a little bit more intense on the skin as well, but you can still see your skin through them. Like for me, I have a lot of freckles. So on days where I'm wearing like a tinted moisturizer or a lighter coverage product, and then I apply this on top, you can still see my skin under the blush, under the tinted moisturizer, which is really nice because even though you do get color, they look really natural on the skin. They give you like that perfect, just walked in from the cold type of flush. It doesn't look like you're wearing a lot of product. It doesn't feel like you're wearing a lot of product because these have a very light, very balmy texture. They're one of the lightest weight blushes I've ever tried, and they're just really, really easy to work with. Now, I will say these are not the longest lasting blushes out of everything I'm talking about in today's video. They definitely don't stay in place as well as the liquid blushes or the Milani cream blushes. They do fade by the end of the day, but because they are so easy to apply, very effortless, you can easily reapply them just by swiping them on and tapping them back in. They're very small and compact, so they're great to throw in your makeup bag or bring with you on the go. But if you're looking for longevity, I'd probably go with the Milani cream blushes over these, but these are very beautiful. They have a ton of gorgeous shades that are just very flattering on the skin. My favorite blush of all time would have to be the Patrick Ta Double Take Cream and Powder Blushes. These are probably the most expensive blushes that I'm sharing in today's video, and one of the most expensive blushes in my collection, but it's absolutely worth it in my opinion because you get two different formulas and both formulas are exceptional. The powder in here is so flattering on the skin. It's not a super thin powdery powder. Like, there's a good amount of substance to it. So as you apply it to the skin, it just gives your skin like this smooth effect. It almost provides a little bit of coverage, but it's very easy to blend out. It's incredibly flattering, and you can build the powders up to look a little bit more vibrant depending on the look you're going for. The creams in here are so gorgeous, and I always thought it was a big no to layer cream over powder until I tried this, and the preferred Patrick Ta method is to apply the cream on top of the powder. And I will say that doesn't always look great depending on which formulas you're using, but with this formula, the cream layers so beautifully over the powder and just kind of gives your skin the most perfect glow. They look amazing paired together, and that's typically the way that I do wear them, but you can also wear them separately and they look really great that way too. In fact, sometimes I do take the cream from this blush and layer it on top of another powder blush if I feel like my skin needs that extra added glow. They've really expanded the blush line within the last year or two, and now they have 12 different duos. There's actually a really helpful picture on Sephora's website because sometimes if you're scrolling through the shades, a lot of them look a little bit similar, but they had this picture, at least they used to, comparing the different shades that are a little bit close, and it might give you a better idea as to which one would work for you and your skin tone or your personal preferences. My favorite duo is Not Too Much, and what I love about this is the fact that the powder is a little bit peachier and the cream leans a little bit more pink. So depending on what look I'm going for, I might go in with a little bit of extra powder or a little bit of extra cream, and it just transforms the look completely. So it's kind of nice. It's not like you're just getting like an identical cream and an identical powder. I feel like within the duos, at least the ones I have, they do vary a little bit. So it makes a difference as you're using them, and you can kind of be a little bit more creative and really customize your blush look that day. Okay, finishing up with my powder blush recommendations. I love a good powder blush. I know that creams and liquids are kind of trendy right now, but as someone who has more oily skin, I've always just really preferred a powder formula. And even once I got into creams and liquids, I still felt like powder was the longest wearing on me. It was something that I would reach for even if I was wearing a cream and liquid, just to kind of layer it on top. So I definitely have some really good, solid powder blush favorites. My oldest favorite, a formula that I've probably been using for like at least 10 years at this point, is from Milani. These are the Milani Baked Blushes. These do come in quite a few different shades, but I will say the shades vary depending on the retailer. Like if you go to Ulta and then you go to Target, you might find different shades. On Milani's website, they have 11 different options. You can always go through them on there, but these are really, really gorgeous on the skin. When I think of a typical baked blush, this is what I think of. It feels a little bit dry. It doesn't feel like it's going to be flattering on the skin if you touch it or swatch it, but it really is so beautiful. These do vary a little bit in terms of color payoff and finish. Some of them are glowy, some have actual glitter in them. So I'll swatch all of them for you just so you can get a feel for what they look like. I do think some of them are maybe more ideal as like a blush topper, whereas some are super vibrant. So I've tried pretty much all of them at this point, and I have like a range. So again, I'll share some swatches just so you can see what they look like. In general, I do find that these are really buildable. So you can go in with a small amount for just like a natural glow, or you can layer them up to get a lot of color payoff if you are choosing one of the shades that has a little bit more color to it. If you love a good glowy finish, but you want a powder formula, I definitely recommend the Milani Baked formula. It just looks so pretty on the skin. In general, it gives your skin like that highlighted blush effect, kind of like you combined a highlighter and a blush, and it just looks so pretty, so luminous. So I feel like these make such a difference. Like if you feel like your makeup look is lacking something and then you reach for one of these, it just kind of takes things to the next level and gives your skin like this beautiful lit from within glow. Maybe that's not the most ideal way to describe it, because I feel like a lit from within glow is a little bit more subtle, whereas these can be very intense, but they really are customizable depending on your brush, your application method, how much you use. So they're really great to have in your collection. And again, I've been buying these for at least 10 years at this point, so they have truly stood the test of time. Another great baked blush that I really love that's actually even more affordable is this one from Essence. These came out, I think, just like 2 or 3 years ago. They're the Pure Nude Baked Blushes, and they come in a really beautiful variety of shades. These are $5.99 each. But honestly, if you put these in high-end packaging, I wouldn't even question it, because I do find that this formula is so beautiful. It feels like a luxury or maybe high-end formula, in my opinion. So within this line, I do feel like these vary a little bit too. Some are more like naturally luminous, and some have actual full-on glitter. So it depends on which one you get. I will swatch them for you just so you can see what they look like. I would recommend picking these up in person or looking at swatches online before buying them, because it's kind of hard to tell if you're just looking at the product photo online, because they do vary just a little bit. So there are some lighter, softer shades that are great if you want something a little bit more subtle, or you like the idea of a blush topper, but there are also some really rich, vibrant shades if you want more color payoff. I'm definitely a fan of blush toppers. I know some people find them to be kind of pointless or unnecessary. If you're going in with blush, you shouldn't need to add another blush on top, but I do feel like a good sheer blush can make a difference. Like I will wear a liquid or a cream, but I typically do end up applying a little bit of a powder blush on top. And honestly, I feel like the Essence blushes make great blush toppers because they just add that glow back into the skin, or they will lightly set your cream or liquid into place without adding too much powder. Like some blushes are very powdery, they feel a little bit heavier on the skin, whereas this formula is incredibly lightweight. It's probably like the lightest, softest powder blush I have. And I think baked blushes in general feel a little bit lighter on the skin, but these are absolutely worth checking out, especially if you don't want to spend a lot of money on what you would consider to be a blush topper, but you do want something very light just to go over liquid or cream blushes. Or again, if you're someone who doesn't like to wear a ton of blush, or you don't like the feeling of a thicker, heavier blush, these are absolutely perfect. And again, very, very affordable. Now, if you're the exact opposite and you're like, I don't want a blush topper, I don't want a sheer blush, I want something super rich and pigmented, something that stays in place all day long, I highly recommend checking out the NYX Buttermelt blushes. These are so stunning. These are absolutely one of the best makeup launches of 2024. They come in 12 different shades, and these are actually more affordable than I feel like I would expect them to be based on the quality. They're $10. Now, they do say online, or they do differentiate, they say that some are matte and some are glowy, but even the so-called matte blushes end up looking pretty glowy on the skin. I have a range of shades to share with you. I have like the lightest pink tone blush, I have a really beautiful bronzy nude, and then I have 2 more vibrant blushes. I don't tend to wear super intense pigmented blushes a lot, but I like to have them on hand just in case I am going for like a very blush heavy look. You barely have to dip your brush into this blush to get really good color payoff. So just something to know if you're someone who is intimidated by super intense blushes, you probably either want to skip this launch or just keep in mind you're going to need to go in with a super tiny amount. But that is really nice to see because there are so many sheer options out there. It's nice to have a very richly pigmented blush. Even though these are super pigmented, they're actually fairly easy to work with because they blend out effortlessly. They're very smooth, very easy to blend into the skin. And again, even the matte blushes, or the ones they market as matte, have a little bit of a luminosity to them. So they're very flattering on the skin. I feel like it almost looks like you applied a filter to your skin when you're wearing this blush. I haven't tried a powder blush that I've loved as much as this in a really, really long time. And typically when I do fall in love with a powder blush, it's like a full-on shimmery or glowy blush, or like a baked blush formula. This does feel like a typical powder, but it's like this creamy powder that's very easy to apply. It almost feels a little bit like a cream powder hybrid, but it leans more in the category of powder, and it applies like a powder, but it has like a creamy finish to it, if that makes sense. Most of the shades in this line are very vibrant, very colorful. So if you're looking for some fun blush options, this is a great line to choose from. If you want something like very subtle, very, very soft, you might want to skip over it, but I hope they'll expand the line and come out with even more shades, because I do think it is a great option. I will say they have the Buttermelt bronzers as well, and some of those are more rosy toned. So if you do love more of like a nude blush, you could definitely use one of the bronzers as blush, and those look really flattering on the skin too. This is probably one of the most unique blushes I own. It's from the brand RMS Beauty. It's actually the only product that I've ever tried from this brand. And I think at the time when I bought it, this brand was sold at Sephora. I don't think they're available at Sephora any longer. The second shade I bought, I got from Nordstrom, but I know you can buy them directly from the RMS Beauty website too. So these retail for $35, but they are actually refillable blushes. So you can purchase a refill for $28. So if you have like a blush palette that you like to put individual blushes in, that could be a good option. They do have quite a few shades, and every single time I look at them, I'm so tempted to buy more. These are really, really interesting. They're definitely powder blushes, but they almost have a little bit of like a creamy or gel-like feel. They actually say online that they are made with a wet powder technology. So they combine like that creamy texture with that glowy finish, and it's hard to explain, but these look amazing on the skin. I'm wearing a little bit of the shade Hanky Panky, which doesn't really look like the blush I have on right now, because I feel like a lot of my bronzer is coming through, but they're so interesting. Like they have this creaminess to them, but again, they are like a true powder blush, but they're so flattering on the skin. These are glowy in a different way. Like they're not glowy like the Essence blushes are or the Milani blushes are. These give your skin that wet looking effect that I feel like typically highlighters or cream blushes give. But it's this really nice, silky, very soft powder formula. It's incredibly flattering, very, very pretty on the skin. So that's the shade Hanky Panky. I probably wear this one a little bit more. This one is the shade Maiden's Blush, which is the first one I bought, and that's kind of what made me fall in love with the line. But I think these are stunning. And again, depending on which brush you use, if you use like a larger fluffy brush, you're going to get more of a natural diffused look. But if you use more of a densely packed brush, like you could even use what's meant to be a foundation brush, you're going to get a super intense look like this. So I love these. I think they are absolutely stunning. One of the most unique, beautiful blush formulas I've ever tried. The last formula I'm sharing with you is from Kosas. So I actually only have one of these, which I know I said the reason I didn't include the Say liquid blush in today's video is because I only had one of those. So maybe I should follow the same reasoning with this. But I do plan on purchasing another one of these, at least one more, maybe two more during the Sephora sale in the fall. This is the Blushes Life Baked Blush, and I have the shade Dreamland. What's interesting to me is that this is a baked blush formula, but it feels a lot different than other baked blushes I have in my collection. It's a lot different than Milani and Essence. When these first launched, and even when I talk about them on my channel, I feel like I still see comments that are like, Laura Geller did it first. I love my Laura Geller baked blushes. I actually used to have a ton of Laura Geller baked blushes, which I feel like I would still love those in 2024. I just ended up decluttering them over the years. This is much different than that type of baked blush formula. A lot of baked blushes have like that dry, almost scratchy feel when you touch them or swatch them, and they can still be really flattering, very pretty on the skin, but this one feels very smooth, very creamy. It's definitely still a powder blush, but it doesn't have that typical like scratchy baked texture that a lot of other baked products do. Even the Kosas baked bronzer feels more like a typical baked product than this. I think the reason might potentially be because of the ingredients. I was reading online that they say this is baked with hyaluronic acid and also squalane, which is supposed to be obviously a little bit more moisturizing. So I do find this formula to be very smooth on the skin, very, very flattering. It's not super glittery or incredibly luminous, but it does have like a nice soft satin texture. It gives you a little bit of a glow without being like a full-on luminous blush, without being shimmery or glittery, at least the shade I have. I think, again, it could depend because baked products really do vary so much depending on which shade you get. But with this one, I feel like it's a really great option on days where I want more of a natural, flattering finish. It's a little bit glowy, but not in the typical way. It's a satin. That's the best way to describe it. So I absolutely love this. I think it looks smooth on the skin, very, very flattering. And again, I do want to pick up some more shades. This is a little bit softer. Like you don't get a ton of color payoff with this, which I feel like with some baked formulas like Milani, you can really build them up to look very vibrant on the skin. And again, it might vary depending on which shade you get, but I will say it's a little bit softer than I originally thought it would be. So just something to point out. Okay, so that is it. Those are all of my favorite blush formulas, the ones that I recommend the most out of everything I own, everything I've tried. I would love to hear from you in the comments, so please let me know if you have any recommendations that you think I should check out, anything that I'm missing out on. And if you want to check out my eyeshadow palette version of this video, I'll link it on the screen for you. Otherwise, I'll see you very soon with a new one. Bye.